Chiefs are that much closer to their third Super Bowl in a row, but they got to lock down what has to happen. What do they have to get done today on Locked On Chiefs?
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. We're going to dig into what happens in this process of getting ready for the biggest game of most players' lives. We're going to walk you through the entire thing. It's time for the history makers to make the history and get that done. That's coming up later in the show. What do the Eagles want the Chiefs to do to kind of play into their plans, and how do we get out of that? We're going to go over that coming up here soon. And we're going to start with what are the things that the Chiefs have to take away? What are the must stops in Super Bowl 59? We're going to go through it all. Thanks for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Make sure you check out another Locked On show next. We appreciate you guys being here, like our everydayers, on every platform, all the time for free, all everywhere. And you can get that much more at 816-357-8781. That's our text line. You can find Chris over at KC Chiefs Corner, over on Substack. A lot of great content there. Quarterbacks, the cap. If you have a cap question, don't ask me. You got to look at that direction over there. And I'm actually pointing correctly today. Let's mark that down, Chris. I'm Ryan Tracy, the founder of Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting. NFL33.com and RGR Football. So we get back to this basic premise of, do you take one thing away? Is there one thing that you can stop that then changes their whole game plan? Or do you do the Belichick thing and you just kind of limit what their strength is and take everything else away? It's a philosophical game, but there's a lot that you can go after. So I guess that's where we start is, what's job number one for you?
Stopping their passing game. And to me, everybody's going to say it should be stopping the running game because Saquon is Saquon, and he's a fantastic running back. And I get that. I understand the perspective. I understand the thought process. I don't agree with it. I don't agree with it because I don't think they win the game by running. Like, could they take over the game? Can they, completely keep the Chiefs off the field? Yeah. But Kansas City has a good enough offense and a fast enough offense to where they could take over offensively and not have that issue. Like, they have the ability to score quick if they absolutely have to. They've done it several times. The Eagles defense is good, but they have had the answer multiple times this year in those types of scenarios. So to me, if you take away the passing game, it's going to make them one-dimensional, and running isn't going to be something that they're going to be able to be as efficient at and score as many points. And I do think the Chiefs are going to be able to move the ball up and down the field.
I think the Chiefs offense is in a good position. I do worry a little bit about the nature of the Saquon Barkley fed running attack. It kind of ties into mine, only that I wasn't being specific about how they got it done. For me, the number one job is to stop and take away all the chunk plays. Anything over 15 yards, you have to put just a lockdown on that. It's the backbreakers that will break you in this ballgame, or that will keep a possession alive when it shouldn't be, or give them points when they haven't deserved them because you had one breakdown that goes for a 60-yard touchdown like Barkley's done a couple of times in the playoff run. So it doesn't matter whether it's him or it's A.J. Brown or Devonta Smith gets loose. We'll see how he's feeling, or even Goddard underneath. We know what the Chiefs have done against tight ends, and there's always something to be concerned about there, right? So for me, it's those chunk plays. You got to make them earn every point by driving the length of the field, not giving up something easy at one time.
Can't really argue with that. I will say, like I said, to me, it's if you stop the passing game in today's day and age, you're generally going to win. And for me, if they can do that, I think they're going to be in great shape. If you can limit Saquon to even 125 yards, I think you're going to probably win the game, and it may not be close because Saquon going off for 125 is good in most instances. I just don't see it winning the Super Bowl.
And that's fair. I think it feeds into, is that enough to keep the ball out of Patrick's hands? Because time of possession, yeah, exactly. Time of possession is the thing that limits what Patrick can then do. And I hate to say Patrick, folks, but let's be real. It's the offense, but it all runs through Patrick. So yep. I'll try to refer to the offense as what they are. But limiting their touches, their number of plays, how they get into a rhythm, especially if they feel the Chiefs that they need to run as well, that's more of a rhythmic kind of thing. And so you need a certain volume of plays to get after it. The thing that I take solace in, and that's my second big thing that they have to stop, and that is any recollections the Eagles might have about slowing down the first 15. because we saw maybe the best game script in a couple of years in the first 15 last time they were on the field. They have to double that. They have to make sure that there is nothing that they can't hit the Eagles with that don't keep them off guard and keep that rhythm going. I think that's ultra important.
Yeah, and we talked about that yesterday in coming out in the second half too. I mean, you have to come out in the second half just about as good as you went in. Usually, the first 15 with Andy is fantastic, and that is definitely something you're going to need. The other thing that's going to play in Kansas City's hands, in Kansas City's favor, is the Eagles have been playing. This is their first break that they've got, so they haven't really had to deal with having some time off in between. Kansas City has had some time off. They're used to it at this point. It's, they should be well rested. They should be in great health. When you look at what this Chiefs team does, it's a question of, can you get pressure on the quarterback with just your front four? If you can do that, that makes the game a lot easier, and that is going to become a very huge key. And we're going to find out more later this week. But the reality is right now we don't even know who's going to be playing for the Eagles on their offensive line. You would think both their starting center and their starting left guard are going to play, but they have health issues. If those guys can't go, that changes things, and that probably even changes what I say they must stop. Because to me, if those guys can't go, you're probably not going to be able to run as efficiently with Saquon Barkley, and it changes the whole dynamic of the game.
It certainly does. And one play in particular that it limits is that tush push. And it doesn't make itself or lend itself to taking extra chances, which I do think is something the Eagles are going to have to do. They're going to have to push on fourth down. They're going to have to get themselves in positions that they feel that they can compete. And normally I think they would use that play because it has been so effective for them over there, even without Jason Kelce on the field for them. But if the Chiefs can limit that in particular, and the offensive lineman obviously is key to that, because Jalen doesn't really do it himself. He's following. This is not a play that is, yes, the 600-pound squat is great for Jalen Hurts, but that's not what gets that play done.
Right. No, he is following, and he is picking where he's going to go. And this goes back to tendencies and figuring out what is the tendency. Is there a tendency of him going one side or the other? And knowing that, it goes down to tendencies of how do they line up? Can you tell what's going to happen with the way they line up? Is there any little thing that you can find? That's what everybody says the devil is in the details. This is the game where that becomes even more paramount than anything else, because you have an extra week to prepare. And really, you've probably already started preparing, like I said, before the playoffs even really started. You at least started taking a cursory look, and then you really got into the details when you figured out it was the Eagles you were going to play. So to me, I think that this is a scenario where Kansas City knows what they're getting themselves into, and they have to stop. They're going to have to stop the offense. And the question is when you start looking at their offense, who's going to be healthy, who's going to be available? A.J. Brown's been dealing with injuries. Devontae Smith has been dealing with injuries. That changes things too if both those guys or either of those guys can't go. Devontae Smith is a huge loss, even though people may not think it would be a huge loss. It's a huge loss for their team to have a guy that is basically a 1B type wide receiver, close to at least with A.J. Brown. If you don't have him, that changes your offense and changes what you're able to do, and you don't have the speed over the top.
It takes options off the table, and that's really what they want and what they need to have. What do they want to see? What do they need to have from the Chiefs, and how the Chiefs put an end to that? That's coming up next.
The big game is almost here, and there's no better way to make it more exciting than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings awarded, Prize Picks makes it fun and simple to get in on the action. Here's how it works. You pick more or less on at least 2 players' projections, and if you're right, you could win up to 1,000 times your cash. Prize Picks even has a free pick for the big game where Patrick Mahomes only needs to throw for 1 yard to win. Pair that with one or more correct pick, and you're cashing out. This week, I'm looking at, okay, how many rushing yards do you think Xavier Worthy could get? Prize Picks' guess right now in their bet is 6.5. That's what their guess is do you think he's going to get more or less than that? Go pick it at Prize Picks. Use that as one of your picks over there at Prize Picks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 off instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game.
This is my favorite part because we get to flip it right now. We're going to talk specifically. If you're looking at the Chiefs from the outside in, what does it look like? What do you want to see if you're somebody in Philadelphia? And I mean in the building, not necessarily the fan base. And it starts and stops for me with just the lack of decision. I think the scariest thing the Chiefs have done on the field in the last 2 months has been pull out that RPO game and let Patrick sling it, hit his back foot on the third step and get that ball out of there, because there is no answer for that. Even with a pass rush that has some speed rushers, that you feel maybe you can get the better of Juwan Taylor from time to time with Nolan Smith. Certainly you have to feel about, you don't know who you're going to face at left tackle, but you have to feel that you have a way to attack that as well. The scariest thing that they want to see is the Chiefs drop the ball and not attack with tempo and speed.
You know, when I look at this, I actually tweeted this earlier. Next gen stats. I'm reading this from X, sorry. Patrick Mahomes targeted receivers behind the line of scrimmage on a career high 26.9% of his attempts, resulting in 851 passing yards, second most in the NFL, and a league high 45 first downs. That, to me, is exactly what the Eagles want to see. The Eagles have been fantastic stopping players at I think the Chiefs have averaged about 6 yards on those plays. The Eagles are leading the NFL in allowing only 4 yards per play on those specific plays. That is what you want to see if you're an Eagles fan. But the reason I bring this out, and the reason I say that, is because it's exactly what we've talked about for the past 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, ever since Hollywood Brown got back. This is not the same offense. You cannot look at past statistics. You cannot look at what the Chiefs did the first 16 games of the season without Hollywood Brown, or 15 games of the season without Hollywood Brown, and look at this offense and think it's anywhere near the same as what it was. Is it completely different? No. But they have different elements that they are going to be able to now do that they haven't been able to do before. And one of those is going to be throwing the ball down the field more. I'm not talking it has to be a 15 to 20-yard shot or more, but just some of the routes that Brown has run where it's a 5-yard slant or a 10-yard out or something similar changes the dynamic of what Kansas City is doing on offense, because they haven't had people doing that on a regular basis. And you still have Xavier Worthy who can take the top off.
Yeah. Makes an immediate impact if he can do that. And it's similar in the reverse as well, because the other thing that the Eagles want the Chiefs to do on the defensive side is to get crazy early and to bring everybody down. And if you see that flattening of the line of scrimmage where everybody's either mugging up in the gaps or is just loitering around like they used to do when Sorensen and Tyron were out there, right? You get the defense too flat that even though you're not in a cover zero, it looks like a cover zero. And that gives the crease that Saquon Barkley's looking for, because then he knows if he gets to the second level, he can pop one and go. And so the key there is to make sure that you maintain your depth and you stay assignment sound. I think they're going to stay in a lot of base. I do think that is the way that they want to attack this, at least initially. And they're going to take their chances with either Smith or Goddard, or I think they'll give special attention to A.J. Brown. So I'm not sure they're terribly worried about that, but they're worried about the chunks to someone else. And if they can stay in base, they feel like they have a chance to defend Barkley. And I think that's the basis of the game plan.
Yeah, and I think that the Eagles are going to try whatever they can to try to get the Chiefs in nickel as much as they possibly can. Because I do think that when you look at this team and you look at their defense, Jalen Watson is really shown growth this year when he's been healthy enough to play. And now he's going to be in a situation where I think he's going to be as close to 100% as he's been since he came back from his injury. But I do think he's actually close to 100% in football shape now at this point. He's been playing long enough. He's had the time to acclimate. That's going to make a big difference. It looked like he was on a pitch count the past couple of games. I don't think he's going to have a pitch count this time. And if that's the case, then you have Najee Johnson or Chamari Connor being your corner, your nickel corner. That is going to be something that the Eagles are going to want to attack. I expect that is where they're going to be attacking. And I think the thing you have to consider to do to counter it is do something you haven't done, and maybe bring in a guy like Jaden Hicks and let him play not necessarily slot corner, but have him come down in the box and try to take the tight end away. I mean, if you want to have him play in the slot a couple of snaps, that's fine, because the reality is that you also have to worry about Jalen Hurts' legs. because while he is not the runner like a Lamar Jackson is, he can use his legs well enough to get out of the pocket and make first downs if he has to. He's mobile enough to do that, and you're going to have to take advantage. You're going to have to make sure that you don't let him get out of the pocket and get free in that way.
That's a very good point, because I think that the secondary phase of that is that what the Eagles want to see is the Chiefs be too worried about Saquon that they don't pay enough attention to what Jalen can do. Now, I think Jalen Hurts is not operating at 100%, to tell you the truth. I know that there's a back issue there. I don't know that he can take a whole lot of hits. So I don't feel like they're going to risk it just ordinarily, like they might do it with a lot of at least called QB runs, but he's going to try to break the pocket. You know that he's going to do that. The impact that you have to do is to bring that hit to him at the time. And I do like Jaden Hicks for that quite a bit. I do want to see him come from space rather than like man up on a tight end, because I think that allows him to unlock his full upscale ability, no matter who he's hitting, whether it is the big tight end or it might just be the quarterback.
Yeah, and I think that there's going to be a lot of different things that are going to play into this. We're going to have a lot more to talk about later this week, especially when we get into Friday and talking about matchups specifically for this game. But I think the other thing, when you look at this, if you're looking at it from the Eagles' perspective, what do they want to see? They want to see a situation where they're probably within a score of the Chiefs all game long. And the reason I say that is because the reality is Kansas City has made a living at getting down 10 points and finding a way to come back and win. I'm not saying that it's going to last forever. And if there's ever a game where you don't want it to happen, it's a Super Bowl. But go look at their couple of wins in the Super Bowl the past couple of times that they played. Against the Eagles 2 years ago, they got down. They came back and they won. I mean, they've done it against the Niners multiple times where they got down and they came back and won. So the Eagles, I think, want to keep this game closer. And don't get me wrong, if they had the opportunity to be, up 2 scores, I think that they would probably want that, regardless of what history says. But I don't think that that's really the position they want to be in, because a closer game probably helps them a little bit, at least from the perspective of, you look at the team and you look at what Patrick is doing. He's not going to risk things as much. And the reality is that he knows this is playing for everything at this point. And anything that you're going to do to give him more motivation is going to work against you. He still is the best player in the NFL, and you do not need to give him any more motivation. So I'll be really curious to see how this game plays out. And if the Chiefs end up getting behind, I'm not going to worry about it near as much as it's I think you probably would have a couple years ago.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And you know what? In his quest for history and Travis's quest for history, they have to push through that. They're going to be ultimately focused here. If they can bring the rest of the squad along with them, they will be okay. What does that look like, though? What do they have to do in order to get this win? Those two to make history. That's coming up next.
Are you looking for tickets for the next big event? Maybe last-minute tickets to the big game next week? Whether it's a concert, a comedy show, or a sports game, finding the right ticket at the right price can be a headache. But with Game Time Picks, it's never been easier. Let me tell you how it works. With Game Time Picks, the app does all the hard work for you. It curates the best deals so you don't have to waste time searching through endless ticket listings. Whether you're looking for a Super Bowl ticket or a concert, go check out Game Time Picks. This is the place to get your tickets. The seat view feature is a game changer. It is awesome. Before I even hit buy, I can see exactly what my seat will look like in the venue. It is very reassuring. And the best part, you're covered with Game Time's lowest price guarantee. If you find a better deal elsewhere, they will refund 110% of the difference. Plus, your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time with easy cancellation options if something comes up. Ready to make your next event even better? Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
History is what you make of it, and this team is ready to make it. It's not just the quarterback. It is the fact that Chris Jones has been here forever. Travis Kelce, obviously, at his point in his career, at his age, this is the penultimate game for him. And I think that's what's standing out to me this week is it's not as much as we need to talk about the quarterback and Patrick Mahomes and being the unique player that he is. It is about the squad as a whole. Derek Notty's been here through a ton of it as well. Another guy who's playing hurt this entire season. Everyone has to step that game up to make this history. And the only thing that I take back from that is that, as we've talked about, there are several draft classes here who know nothing else than championships at the professional level. And getting that motivation, getting yourself hyped up for that, getting yourself to pull your level of play up is maybe a little bit more difficult for them, given that they've known no disappointment. They've known no going home early and throwing their stuff in a trash bag the last day of the regular season and going home, because they've never done it.
Yeah. No, and I think, you talk about history, and if we take a step back and we look at it from a different light for just a moment, Patrick Mahomes is chasing greatest of all time status at his position.
Travis.
That was where I was going with this. So is Travis Kelce. You have two players at two different positions chasing greatest of all time status at their position. You have at least two more players in Chris Jones and Joe Thuney, who I think are probably going to be guys that could be in the Hall of Fame someday. And that's just the start with those four guys. That is historical to have that kind of just think about that. You have three guys on offense, and who knows what will happen with, the other guys that are young in Kansas City. We don't know at this point, obviously, whatever. That's great. Trent McDuffie looks like he could be a guy that could be challenging for, Canton one day. Quite honestly, in my opinion, he's been that good in my opinion. But you have four guys that I think could easily make a case for the Hall of Fame in the near future. That's historical on the same team going for this. And you have two at their own position that is going for greatest of all time at their positions. This means so much for all of them. I mean, Joe Thuney can't even put all of his Super Bowl rings on one hand.
It's a rough life.
Very. Travis Kelce will be, has three. He will be able, if they win, we'll have four, and will not be able to put any more on one hand, on the fingers at least. Patrick Mahomes, same deal. But the reality is that, they're in a situation where, who knows, Patrick could end up having the same scenario that Thuney has right now, not being able to have enough Super Bowl rings, or not having enough fingers on one hand for all the Super Bowl rings. The reality is history is here, and these players playing for it, and it's not even necessarily big name players. Joe Thuney's not a big name player, but his contribution to this team and to this franchise since he's gotten here has been huge. And and anybody that knows football will tell you he is one of the best at his position, and he's been playing at a position and playing above average, which is crazy.
Yeah. And all three of those guys are working together to do what they need to do to be historic, to make this team historic, and do something no one else has ever done. And I think it's got to stay that way. I think this entire season, and the low output Travis Kelce has had, has lulled people to sleep. He's popped up twice where he's had some big games, but not enough to really put it on the radar. I wonder that the defensive coordinator in Philadelphia is maybe not as concerned as he should be with Travis Kelce. So I think this has to be a Kelce game. It certainly has to be a Kelce first 15, in my opinion, to use Joe Thuney's skill and his, like you said, outlandishly good play at left tackle, even though he is the best left guard in football. You have to feed Kelce early, and I think that's the path to making this history.
Well, the crazy thing is like it's too young to say anything right now, but Creed Humphrey is all well on his way as well. But the crazy thing is you talk about history and what this could mean for all four of those guys, especially when you start talking Canton down the road in 5 or 6 years after they retire. Patrick, I don't think is going to have an issue. Travis Kelce's not going to have an issue. If Chris Jones gets his third straight Super Bowl and his fourth Super Bowl with the Chiefs, I don't think he's going to have an issue. Joe Thuney, I don't think will have an issue with all the Super Bowl rings he's got, with all his All-Pros, with all of his accolades, even though he's a guard. It's just historic to be able to sit in this position and to think this is where the Chiefs are right now. And we don't even really think about it because we're so close to it, and we just see them as players playing a game right now. But when you look at the grand scheme of things, this is all historic. Like, all of it is historic, and it's a blessing to be watching this. I'll put it that way.
It is the golden
age. Count your blessings when you're watching this, because it's one of the things that doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, it may not ever happen again. That's
true.
That's where we are at this point.
And you
we're
make a
happy
great
that
point.
you guys.
You make a great point about Kelce. He's been quiet. And I've had people ask me, why has he been so quiet? He's over the hill. He doesn't have this skill set. You've seen that. You've seen in the games. He has it still. He could have a huge game. And I disagree with you. I don't think it has to be Kelce in the first 15.
No.
I think you're going to get Brown and Hopkins in the first 15.
Okay. I can live with that. I just know that it has to be about Travis taking advantage of what I think will be an underestimation from the defensive side of the opposition. So that is one aspect. There are many others. We are going to cover them all week long, and we're going to start tomorrow with Matt Derrick back with us, going over what he's hearing from inside the organization. He is our man on the beat, and he will give us the insight that we always need to kind of keep my mind from racing away. And then we will be back. We will talk with the other side. Do not miss Thursday as we go through what is actually happening with Philly, so we can kind of discern some things there. And then we will set you up for the big game on Friday. Do not miss our preview show. We will have it all for you, including all the way down to our predictions and everything else that you're going to need to enjoy this ball game. We hope that you will join us all week long because we're free and available every day of the week. That's the way we do it here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Go check out another Locked On show for your next one here right now. Thank you for being with us. We very much appreciate you, as we always do. Have a great night. Get ready for tomorrow with Matt Derrick. Be with us all week long as the craziness ensues down in New Orleans for Super Bowl 59.